Japanese people are losing hopes. A survey asked company employees this question: do you think it's more beneficial not to do anything innovative at a workplace? 65% of the people say yes, meaning they think it's beneficial not to do anything innovative or anything outside of the box. Another survey asked them, which type of colleague would you rather have? A colleague who is keen on trying new things or willing to try new things, or someone who conforms to the majority of the company. 68% said they would rather have someone who conformed to the majority. The most common reason why they chose the latter answer is that they didn't want to get into trouble. They didn't want to create the troubles. According to a summary report of the World Youth Survey in 1993, although only 27% of the Japanese said they would stay at a company for the rest of their lives, most people who participate in the survey said they would love to change their jobs. They would love to work in a new job, but they would also continue to work in the same place that they're currently working, regardless. The survey is critical of this result by calling the Japanese passive egoists, meaning people are egoists, but they passively are. This is a typical characteristic of Japanese people, being passively egoistic. Example of this is you would rarely see people helping. For example, someone passed out on the street in the rain in Japan. This might be common elsewhere in the big cities like New York, but in Japan, it is really, really common. It's we have so many people, for example, in Tokyo. It's the world's largest city in the world. But if someone is passed out on the street, nobody is even calling an ambulance. Nobody's even reaching out a hand. That's usually the case. Why does this happen? Well, simply, just like I stated the reason before about not speaking up or not being innovative at a workplace. Most Japanese people don't want to get into trouble by unnecessarily being heroic. Although it is a moral thing to do, they just don't want to get into trouble. And what makes these passive egoists worse than the overt egoist, which is being just selfish in general, is being passively egoistic is less visible. For example, if you help someone on the street, yeah, that would be complimented. But even if you don't help the person on the street, you won't be attacked, really, for not helping that person. So it's easier to get away with the immoral choice, unethical choice that you made. It is definitely the disadvantage of being a collectivist. And just by speaking up for the minority, you are called up as a woke person, or you're so woke about it. For example, if I protest, okay, I actually, when I was in a Japanese teaching school, I actually made a PowerPoint of a example describing how to say they do together in Japanese. So they hold their hand, each other's hands, and then I presented, right, of two women, possibly gay women, on a presentation to give out the example. And the most of the people in the classroom said 意識高い, which means you're so woke about the social issues. And I wasn't even trying to be a woke person. I was just presenting that it's because it was normal for me. I have gay people in my friends, so it was really normal for me. But if you, as soon as you present something like that, they would think, okay, you're a really woke person. And one of them even said, okay, there are some Muslim students and they wouldn't like that, so I don't think that's a good idea to present something like this. So I was really shocked. And I wanted to talk about this in another video about veganism in Japan, but the reason why it's really slow to progress, the veganism for veganism to progress in Japan, is because people are passively egoistic. Okay? Even if you don't do something, even if you live a normal life, you choose to do something. For example, if you consume animal products, you choose to contribute to the animal suffering, right? I'm sorry, I'm just being an activist here. But like, people in the West, simply because it's developed, probably yes. And it just came from the UK, like the term veganism came from the UK. Yes, that's true, and the English-speaking countries, for the English-speaking countries, it's easier to spread veganism for that reason. But also, I think the reason why the progress in Japan is really slow is because people are passively egoistic. They don't understand that living a normal life can be harmful to some minorities or some social issues. Same example to the person who passed out on the street. If they don't do something about the passed out person on the street, you still choose to not to help the person. You chose an unethical choice, right? Regardless of whether you are going to be, I don't know, get into trouble, right? You should at least call an ambulance or something, right? But like, most people don't do those things because they don't want to get into trouble, and they are so selfish about it. They're not trying to be selfish, right? But they are actually egoistic, and they are selfish, and they don't understand it, and they get away with it because they are passively egoistic, just like I was explaining. That's why you see lots of people on the internet, the Japanese internet, attacking lots of people anonymously, without showing their faces, without showing their names. It's more prominent in Japan than in the West, I've noticed. I've seen more Japanese comments that are negative, that are stupid, that are childish than the English comments. Of course I've seen like childish comments in English, but like when they talk about, like, for example, social issues or like ethical problems, there are less stupid comments in an English section, whereas in Japanese comment section, they're like, most of them are so childish and they are like really unethical. So they start to lose hope at a workplace, and they start to lose hope in other areas of life. Japanese people. Because this is about the social system that Japan currently has. Even if you do something that contributes to the company's income, you aren't really necessarily evaluated, right? In ordinary Japanese companies. If you're working in a foreign company, yeah, you would get like lots of promotion and so on. But in Japanese companies, since this is seniority, which is the word I still try to pronounce correctly, the older you get in a company, the more you are evaluated positively, right? You are seen as a person who have power and experience, even if it's not the case. So young people are not evaluated correctly in Japanese companies. That's why a lot of people complain about brutal Japanese culture and the work culture and how shitty it is to work in a Japanese company. That's the meat of the pie, actually. You invent something innovative, but like your boss would just take out all the credits, and your pay doesn't have a salary raise, and that's ingrained in this school system as well. Even if you are like really good at something, at a subject, you don't just skip grades just like you could do in other countries. So that's ingrained in education and as well as in the work culture. So that's a really big problem. And Japanese people just start to numb their feelings. Even if they want to do something that's innovative, they start to lose hope because of the environment they're in. So I believe that's one of the biggest reasons why most Japanese people are unhappy and the very high suicidal rates, because they are just don't have hopes anymore. They're just numbing their feelings. But like those who are fortunate enough to get out of the cycle, the vicious cycle of this work culture or just the Japanese culture, to conform and kill yourself inside, just hold yourself inside, they just get a breakthrough and they possibly move out of country. And I think most people who are fortunate enough to break out of that brutal culture, or people who are aware of themselves that they are unhappy to be in that culture, they break out of that culture by either working themselves, self-employing themselves, or just moving out of the country. Anyway, that was my honest opinion as well as the factual things about Japanese culture. The survey says it, so that's true, that the Japanese people don't have hopes at workplace. It's not just a really brutal long hours of working, but it's also the work culture that Japan has is contributing to the suffering of people, unnecessary suffering of people. And I'll see you in the next one. Until next time.